How's it going? This is a strange question. Does anybody else feel kind of lonely? I find myself being not just alone a lot, but lonely. Just wanting companionship, even if it's just talking about nothing or, nothing important anyway. Sometimes it's just being in the same room as somebody is enough. But I figured like I wanted to meet with somebody and talk. It's a shame that there's nobody on the other end of this with the back and forth, but I figured at least I can do my half of the conversation, as strange as that sounds, um, and just start talking. And if anybody listens, then, so be it. If they don't, then, at least I got to talk a little bit. So, one of the things that has been going on in my life for the last couple months. My wife and I were living in England we lived there for about 2 years, and we moved back to the States back in November, just before Thanksgiving. We have Thanksgiving at my parents' house. My mom has a stroke the next day, so she's been in hospital for the last months. It's been pretty tough. She had had she had had an aneurysm a few years back, but she totally recovered from it. About 90% recovered from it. It was, I think, a miracle. But now she's sort of in a hospital. It's really hard because apparently uh, it's really difficult to visit people in hospitals nowadays because of coronavirus. You have to wear a mask. And I think since this Omicron thing has shown up, really clamping down on who can visit. So lately, it's just been my dad visiting. I'm actually in Philadelphia. My parents are down near Washington D.C. So it's been I've been down there half the time since it's happened, um, and it's been really depressing. And she actually caught coronavirus in one of the facilities she was in. So if she didn't have enough troubles as it is, and it's just really depressing. Um, I don't, as stressful as it is, knowing that your mom's sort of fighting for her life, or at least fighting for a life that I know that she would want. I don't think she just wants to cling to life. She never was that way. Um, So if she can't have a life that she wants, I don't think she wants to be alive. So it's difficult to see her in this situation because she's having to deal with all of these problems, and people talk about her as if she's not in the room. It's very bizarre. Um, and when I've gone to see her, try to talk to her a little bit. She can't really talk. She can maybe eke out a word or two, and that's about it. It's really heartbreaking because be careful what you ask for because she used to talk nonstop and now she doesn't talk very much at all. Um, my dad says she has good days and bad days, and so we'll see where it goes. It took her about 8 months to get from her aneurysm to at home functional, um, and that was a lot of work for her. And she was about 7 years younger then. She had been, that's what caused her to retire. And so, anyway, it's been quite difficult dealing with that. And I find that that's my life now. When we move back home, I don't have a job anymore like I did in England, even if it was sort of a small job. I've been applying for jobs, and I've had a couple phone interviews with some recruiters. I'm very skeptical of recruiters. My experience with them has been dreadful. There were a couple good eggs here and there, but most of them are just, they don't return phone calls. They make you promises and that they never have any intention of fulfilling. It's really trying, but at least I have in the last, I would say last 2 or 3 weeks, had a couple phone calls. I've been applying to so many jobs. And it's just, there's a lot going on in my life, even though there's nothing going on in my life. It's a very bizarre circumstance I find myself in. And I wonder if anybody else has how people cope with this sort of stress. I find myself to be very stressed out about life. Uh, and I'll tell you what, this coronavirus is like the worst thing in the world for me. Um, uh, I have been, over the course of my life, I've had several bouts with depression. So I guess I'm sort of a depressed person um, as a rule. I guess that's just the way I am. It's not something we really talk about in our family, so I don't know how much genetics plays a role in it. I don't know how many people are depressed in my family, but I can't imagine it's zero. So I just have to deal with this on my own, and without finding out who it was that had the depression. Who knows? It could show up in other ways, in forms of like alcoholism. My family background is Irish, and that is a problem uh, in the Irish community. They're sort of famous for being alcoholics, but I only knew a couple in my mom's family who liked to drink a little too much. Um, but I don't think that's me. I do like to drink, and I do have to sort of pull myself back. Um, and I figure after how many years of being an adult, I probably would have known by this point, and I'm not lying to myself. Um, but it is something that I kind of have to keep an eye on. Thank God I have my wife, who is a bit of uh, in a nice way, is a bit of a nag about some things. I guess you kind of have to have somebody watching for you. Um, and being depressed doesn't really help too much. So, um, I don't know if that's too much information, but there it is. Um, one of the things I've actually I have found a couple. Um, I hate using the term life hack because it just sounds like some kind of like crappy repair on something that's just, why don't you just go buy a new thing or something like that. But in a sense of ways to make your life better. And one of the things that I've found is cooking is a thing that makes my life better. For some reason, I find it very therapeutic to concentrate on chopping onions and garlic and all that stuff. And having some of the things you have to do in stages. So you have to kind of be conscious of what you're doing. Stick something in the fridge to marinate, and then, okay, I have to come back to it in an hour, and then I have to turn on the oven, and then I have to do this. All that stuff. I know it sounds like a giant pain in the ass, but it really does help because you're so focused on the details of trying not to ruin the chicken or trying not to burn the whatever it is you're doing, that you kind of forget all your problems, and your problem is making a meal, and the rest of your problems, which are mostly in your head, sort of disappear, at least for an hour or two. Um, so that's some sort of coping mechanism that I found. I've also found that keeping a list um, helps me out a lot. don't really like using phones. I try to keep myself at a minimum on the phone. I use YouTube videos while I'm cooking, either there's music or some kind of documentary that I want to watch or sort of watch, but mostly listen to while I'm cooking or cleaning or something like that. And I've found that the list, like when you go through a list and you say, "Oh, got that done, got that done, got that done," after a while you think, "Huh, I actually did something with my day, even though there's no money in there coming into the bank account. I actually got a lot of work done today." And so one of the things, I'll just kind of go through my list. So the thing is with my one of my talents is I am pretty good at languages. Uh, I've always taken languages ever since you could take languages. In high school, I took Latin. So I was very good at Latin. And I actually took it because I had heard from somebody who had taken it that it's easy. There's no like conversational component to it. It's just written. And it's just, I mean, it's kind of foreign, but a lot of the words look the same. So I ended up doing that. When I went to college, I did German and French. I ended up moving to France for a couple of years, and then I became fluent in there. A couple of years later, I moved to Germany, got fluent there, but I've since forgotten most of my German. I could probably eke out something, get myself in and out of trouble, but uh, the level of conversation I would have in German is not very sophisticated. I think with French, my comprehension and just it wasn't Shakespeare. It was Charlemagne. He said, "If you have a second language, you have a second soul," and I find that that's true. I actually have a very different personality in French. I'm much more subdued in English. I think I'm a little bit more aggressive in French. Maybe it's because it's something to do with France or something to do with the way I learned French. I'm not really sure. But I do notice that I'm uh, much different anyway. And so I've actually started on Duolingo. If you've ever had it, I'd give it a whirl if you're interested in learning another language. It's not amazing. It really depends on the language that you're learning. I'm learning Portuguese in it. Um, and Portuguese, obviously, as a Romance language, there's a lot of overlap with French and Latin. They even use some English words. Some of it's a bit, um, it's obviously a bit different, but the fact remains is that it is something, it's something interesting. It's spoken by like 250 million people in the world, so it's a big language. Um, from what I understand, if you can understand a bit of that, you can understand Spanish. It's a good starting point. I don't know. It's a little bit off the beaten path, and that's the way I live my life. I'm also um, bought a couple books when I was living in England, and I actually started using them again. I've been taking, I wouldn't say taking a class, but just sort of going through these books because a lot of it's written of ancient Greek. I have always loved ancient Greek everything. As well, I did the Latin, and the Romans were, culturally obsessed with the Greeks. I mean, they copied their style of architecture. They tried to copy a lot of their philosophy and their sense of history and their sense of dramatics, but they never really got their, at least in sort of the literature, the way that the Greeks did. And so, I mean, I must have read, you know, I can't even imagine how many books I've read about ancient Greece, ancient Greek authors like Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, Plato, Aristotle. Um, some of my favorites, yeah, the historical ones like Plutarch, Thucydides, um, Herodotus. Sorry. They're just fun. I just find it just to be totally amazing, and there's so much of it. It's really hard to focus on one thing. I just go ping, 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 and it's one of the few things that kind of gets me up in the morning. So I've been reading uh, ancient Greek. It's kind of written the way you would. The book is kind of made just the same way that any French or Spanish book would be done. Just kind of you follow a family, but it's kind of set in ancient Athens or around there. And there's a guy who owns a farm, and he has a slave, and the slave's a lazy little shit, and and he's got a couple of kids. The kid's name is, the son's name is Philippos, and the daughter's name is Melita, which I've learned then is where the word Melissa comes from, Melitza, and apparently that means bee. And so you name your kid Bee, as in bzz. And then the wife's name is Marina, Marina, um, and I don't know. It's just kind of fun. What else do I do? I run three different vlogs. They're all kind of on the same site, but they're sort of different themes. One is I do all these readings of these great books of the Western world. I'm in the middle of a Dostoevsky book called The Brothers Karamazov. It's really heavy. It's not light reading. There are a lot of heavy themes in it, and you kind of have to handle them carefully. But with that said, it is a really good book. It's a really intense book, and there are a lot of subplots, and just everything it resonates. He's such a good writer. I wish I could read the original Russian, but I don't. I can only learn so many languages. And Russian literature can be very intense, but it's also very, I think, really rewarding. I've never read a bad book written by a Russian author, and I've read quite a few. So, yeah, so I just figured, I'll just drink a cup of tea and chat to you as you would with a friend. And, I don't have any biscuits or anything like that. So, sorry. Well, not that it matters to you, but if you wanted to listen to me crumble some biscuits, I did. I actually brought a couple packages of chocolate digestives from England. I haven't touched them yet, and I suppose I should before they go off. But they're dangerous to have around because they don't really last too long. They just, you know. So anyway, um, it's nice talking to you. It's nice, I wish that I could actually talk to somebody. I'm sure somebody out there might feel the same way. And if you do feel the same way, and you like stuff, just give me a little holler. I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.